Okay, let's get started this evening. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. There's always more people the second time. I don't know why. Let me move my large podium forward a little bit. There we go. I learned, anybody familiar with putting clothespins on music stands? Why would you do that? For the wind. That's what I learned. Outdoors, music shows, clothespins. Otherwise music flies everywhere. I learned that from all the jazz kids. This is a bit of trivia. So I'm Greg Allen. This is George Bird over here. And George is going to share some of his experience tonight, as will I. So let me just do a little quick orientation. Who has ever been in this room before? When you were in 6th grade you came here? No. Okay, so this is called the annex, as you know. You found it, which is good. It's not easy because the address says Silver Spur. So I never give it they're driving around all night down there. So this is a partnership with Freedom for You, which is a youth nonprofit organization here in the Hill, and in the library district, Ballsbury's library district. So there's actually a working library here. Every youth publication and novel there is here. And about 30 to 40 kids pile in here after school every day. And they actually do homework in here, some kids study. And they play games, and there's computers over there. And it's kind of a safe place for kids to go. On a lot of weekends we do like music shows here. High school kids perform songs they've written. We had actually rock bands playing in here a few weeks ago. You missed it. And kind of coffee house style music also, singer, songwriter, and jazz shows in here, different things like that. So it's kind of like a little teen center. And there's a lot of literature there, you probably saw some. And the other thing about Freedom for You, we have a lot of music programs, and we have creative arts, we have life skills. I'm a counselor by trade, I'm a doctor in psychology. My mother can't believe it. And we've actually put counselors in 8 public schools right now that are working in the South Bay, doing individual and group counseling for kids that are struggling with life circumstances, family issues, or alcohol and drug issues. So we do a lot of those services, and we have a great leadership group of phenomenal high school kids from both high schools here in the Hill, 17 kids, boys and girls. I can't believe it, they're fantastic. And they do a lot of mentoring with junior high kids, and they do activities together to kind of be healthy role models. And I also use that high school group as a survey pool to ask them questions and help us understand the teen world, which is why you're here too, right? We're here to try to understand what I call the youth subculture, okay? Because it really is like a whole nother culture, subculture. It's a whole different world. And can you figure out how to turn that sound off and that little radio thing there? I bet you can. Yeah, I know. There we go. Thanks. Okay, so as you can see how old I am. I've been doing this for a while. I have 4 kids, and my youngest is 29, which is why I'm so happy. And, who's ever heard me speak before? A few people. I can't use all the same jokes.
It was a while ago.
Okay, you forgot. I have to remember them now. So, one last bit of personal story here. I was going back to schools up here and doing some counseling, and a lady came up to me that was a teacher when I was in school, and she said, "You know what?" She looked up at me like this, and I looked down at her, and she said, "You and your brothers and all your friends were the worst kids we've ever had in school." And I said, "Really?" She said, "Yes." She says, "There was nothing we could do." She said, "All you kids were out of control." So I said, "I don't remember, I'm sorry." But I apologized to her. So I know what it's like to be a wild kid in Palos Verdes, and I know a lot of you don't have wild kids, or you'd probably be out chasing them right now if you did. But a lot of the things that I've learned from my parents love me, and we'll say they did a good job, here I am, right? Is that I changed some things, so I did with my kids, our 4 kids, and a lot of it worked. Okay, so I share from that experience. I also share from working as a counselor for a long time. And so one of the first, I just want to go over like 4 or 5 points. So the first one I'd say is about communication, because it's a big challenge to communicate with someone from a different culture. You ever talk to anybody? Anybody here speak Romanian? Okay, good. I always use Romania as an example, so I don't want to offend anybody. If you had to speak with someone from Romania or from another culture, you would spend time trying to understand their culture, right? You wouldn't just assume that person, if they came to visit, stay in your home. Like if a teenager from another culture came to stay in your home, you would just assume they knew when you eat or how you eat or what the rules are in your home or how their manners are, whatever. You wouldn't assume that. You'd try to understand them, and you'd be kind of patient, and you'd probably ask them a lot of questions, like, well, what do you do for this? And, you know, how's it going in school, or what's it going with the other kids, or what's happening on the weekends? And communicating with teenagers, one of the big things I can tell you is if you can somehow remove some of your emotions, it would help. Because your kids' friends probably can talk to you okay. Right? Like when your kids' friends come over, can you talk to them? Like you go, hey, how's it going? Whatever your name is. How's soccer? How's science? How's whatever? They go, oh, it's okay, Mrs. So-and-so. I'm this, and you kind of talk in the kitchen. You can talk to them, right? There's some communication there. And one of those kids actually tells your kid, hey, your mom's pretty cool. You're like, who? The lady in the kitchen? Right? So why is it easier sometimes for us to talk to someone else's kids than our own kids? Because we don't have all these feelings involved, like why didn't you pick up your socks this morning, and you know, why don't you do this and why don't you do that. So if you're going to try to have communication with your kid, you're going to have to learn to not react emotionally. Okay? You have to do what us trained counselors are trained to do. When someone tells us something very alarming, we just smile and go, huh? On the outside, okay? On the inside, we can go, I can't believe it. I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe my kid told me this. I can't believe my daughter told me that. This is like, you can't react. If you're going to react on your kids, have an anxiety attack on them, they're not going to want to talk to you. You don't want to talk to anybody that you can't, you know, they're panicking when you just say 3 sentences, right? So you're going to have to somehow not react. Okay, that's hard. But communication is supposed to be a two-way street. And everything I've heard from parents that have made progress in their relationship with their kids over time is that one of the things they learn to do is they learn to listen to their kid. That's a novel concept, isn't it? Listen to our teenager. Like a lot of us think that's the last thing we need to do is listen to them. They need to listen to me, right? I need to tell my teenager something that I've already told them 5,000 times, right? Maybe I could drill it in there one more time in their head. Maybe this time they'll understand what I'm saying, right? So we don't think we need to listen to them. But if you have a relationship with anybody, and a lot of you are married, if for any kind of relationship, you have to have the ability to listen to the other person, hear their point of view, hear their feelings, hear their experience, right? Sounds so simple, right? Communication is two-way. And what you need to do with your kid is to have a relationship where you don't just talk to them, but they actually talk to you. And some of you, your kids already don't talk to you, right? They're already, you're the last person they want to talk to. And that's very common for a lot of teenagers across the country. As kids across the country, you know, if you needed to talk to someone, who could you talk to? So they'll name, you know, a relative or a teacher or a counselor or a coach or a parent. And I said, okay, well, who do you talk to when you need to? They said, I talk to my friends. And they ask kids, would you like to talk to your parents? And they all say, yeah, I'd like to, but we can't handle it. We can't. Face it, we can't handle what they're going to say. We can't handle what's going on with teenagers, the stuff they're exposed to. And there's a few handouts over there about communication with teenagers, and it's all around the theme of listening and also technology. Because once you really see what's going on in technology, texting and sites and this and that, you'll probably be very alarmed. Maybe not, but probably. And another way to look at your kids is that you're not just raising a 12-year-old or a 16-year-old. Okay, you're raising a 24-year-old, right? You're raising a young adult, to be a young adult, right? So your goal is, when they're 24, hopefully they're out of the home, right? They might have graduated from Berkeley, though, and be back home working at Starbucks nowadays. Right? Hopefully they're out of the home, they finish with college, and they're in their first job somewhere, and they're actually managing life, you know, because that's going to happen, right? Some of you have kids out of high school? Anybody have college kids? A few of you? All right, so they're out of the home, right? You're worried, you're scared, you don't know what's going on. And you want your kid, when they're gone one day, to be able to handle life, right? That they're going to be able to negotiate situations, people, relationships, stress, right? That's your goal. You're raising someone that can manage life. And to do that, to create that product that when they're 24 they can be okay in the world, they have to have opportunities to succeed now. Okay, not just succeed academically. They need opportunities to test out relationships, to test out being challenged, to test out failing. A lot of us don't want our kids to fail. We want everybody to get A's, and we'll overly protect them. We'll make sure they don't get any consequences of anything they do, because we love them so much, right? But this is a time for them to learn to deal with setback, disappointment, mistakes, while they're home in your safe bubble. Because your home is safe. Because you love your kids so much. Your home is a safe place, right? You know what it's like in the real world, right? It's not that nice, is it? Now the annex is nice here tonight. George hopefully will be nice when he talks. I'm the nice guy. He's a nice guy. But the real world's tough, right? People don't really care about if your feelings are hurt. They don't really care how disappointed something happened to you. All right? When they get in the workplace, their boss, their coworkers, everybody's striving to climb on top of each other, right? Look at the traffic, how people drive. So while they're home with you, you need to look at every opportunity that maybe they mess up or there's a disappointment or something, to try to have them learn from that. To learn from that, okay? I talked to Dad the other day, and his kid came home, and it's like a 10-year-old kid, and he says he checks all her homework every night. I go, all her homework or just the math? He goes, I look at all her homework. I correct all her homework. I make sure when she turns it in, she's turning everything in correct. Okay, I'm like, all right. I go, do you correct homework, or just like you take it to her to have her, redo it if it's wrong? He goes, well, she does some of it, he says. But I want the teacher to make sure she gets, A's. So that kid's not learning, you can see what the message is there. So, the other thing with teenagers is, a few years ago I used to talk a lot about love, which is important. We need to be loving with our kids. But I think we also need to have discipline and structure. And too many kids up here don't have that. Okay, a lot of kids do. Some family has too much structure, and they need to ease up a little bit, and the kids need a little freedom. But a lot of times parents are afraid to say no, because they're going to get a lot of anger coming towards them, a lot of, nah, and you don't want to deal with that conflict. You don't want to deal with your kid throwing a tantrum, screaming at you, making a big deal, or just challenging you on how come, and why, and my friend. So you avoid conflict by not saying no, or not putting limits. But the real world is, again, it's full of limits, right? And rules and consequences. We almost always get a consequence if we mess up or we do something, step outside the boundary. So it's okay to say no, and you can't be your kid's friend. Right? You communicate that you love your kids. You need to tell your kids you love them. I know it sounds stupid, I'm here telling you that. You need to hug your kids, give them physical affection. Okay? I tell kids, go hug your parents. Tell your parents you love them. Even if they're not telling it to you, you go tell them you love them. Tell your parents you want to spend time with them. And if your dad says, oh, I'm too busy, I'm too stressed out, don't accept that. Pursue them. Keep going after them. Because the kids need time with dads, especially teenagers, right? And a lot of the transitioning should start happening to dads a little bit in the teen years. The mom should do everything. But maybe there's some dads that are home and the moms are working. I gave a talk once to a bunch of parents, and 3 moms came up there very upset with me because they're out there working, driving to downtown every day, and the dads are not. So I got to change my mindset here a little bit. So the kids need structure, and they need affection, and they need guidance. And the other thing about communication is sometimes we just say, this is the rule, this is what it is. The kid's like, well, why? Well, how come? And the extreme example is we say, because I'm the parent, that's the rule, that's the way it is, it's my home. I think you need to talk to your kids. You need to learn how to have a conversation with them. And you need to learn to talk about why you feel the way you do about any rule. Okay? And talk about it. Like, well, I think 10 o'clock you should come home because it's a legal curfew, because whatever, kids are driving around drunk, because whatever it is, because I'm worried, because I'm scared. A lot of our rules come out of our fear, and it's realistic fear. I'm afraid if you're out later, like teenagers, past 10 or 11 at a house or a party, whatever, I'm worried something's going to happen. And have your kid explain to you why they should be allowed to have this rule or this privilege they want. And just dialogue about it. Doesn't mean you're going to give in, but you should be able to just to talk with your kids and talk through things and have a conversation going. If you're going to actually guide your kids to not be party kids up here that get drunk on weekends or do smoke marijuana, and you're thinking, what, my kid? Hopefully not your kid. But you're going to be swimming upstream a little bit in terms of the youth subculture, because a lot of kids by the time they're seniors or juniors in high school are drinking across the country, and there's even more of that going on up here because there's more money here. So there's more opportunity, and kids have more freedom, and kids have more autonomy, and kids are more clever. Saying I'm over here when they're over here, and I'm late because of this, not that. Okay, I'm not saying it's your kids. I'm saying it's a lot of kids. A lot of kids don't know how to have fun in a healthy way. They don't know how to de-stress. The number one reason kids drink or use drugs now is to de-stress. Like adults, I need to have a drink because I won't stress out. Okay? We're way overly focused on academic achievement. That's all that matters. That's a joke. Is academic achievement. We care so much about that in my opinion, we've lost the emphasis on what kind of person are we raising. Character. Right? We just care about the grades. And a lot of parents don't care if their kids are doing this or doing that or acting like this or doing this with this guy or this girl because they're getting good grades. Maybe they're playing a sport. Right? But we need to raise healthy 24-year-olds is what we're doing. So a 24-year-old can think for themselves, they can dialogue, they can have discussion, and they can deal with stress, they can deal with working together like in a team. I'm saying a lot of kids now that come out of high-achieving districts like our district and go to like the best colleges and they go into the workplace, those kids who haven't experienced any like disappointment or they've been so successful, they can't handle the workplace. They can't handle when their boss gives them a review. And when you get a performance review in your job, right, they tell you what you're doing good. They look at your job description, see how you're doing. And they say what you're not doing good, what you got to work on. Those kids can't handle it. They think they failed. They're just giving them feedback. You got to work on this and work on that. Because they haven't dealt with any disappointment in their life. Right? So those kids are crying. They call home. They call their mom. The mom's calling the boss. The boss is like hanging up. Right? And when the average job after college is about a year and a half, and then the kids go for their second job. And when they go for the second job and they go for that job interview, that employer calls the first employer and they go, how are they? How were they at your place? Right? And they're not asking how many AP classes did they take in high school. Okay? How many service hours did they do? Right? How many A's did they get in high school? They don't care about that. What do they care about? Can they work together with other people? Are they team players? Do they have a drive that when there's a struggle or a problem, they're going to push through it? They're not going to give up when they get adversity or something, conflict. Right? Can they handle corrective action? Can they handle criticism? Can they handle it or not? And those are the skills you want to try to build in your kids now. So I don't know if you can translate some of that to now, but that's what we have to do. So see it as an opportunity. Anytime a problem happens, see it as a learning opportunity, a potential to learn a life lesson. So this guy did this to you, this girl did this to you, the teacher said this, the coach is that, my friends are this. Well, let's talk about it. So I said, you know what? I shifted. I go, it's probably more important for me to know what is he thinking? What's going on inside his head? What's he going to do when he's out there in a situation? That's probably more important for me to figure that out than for me to repeat myself again and try to drill it in his head again. So I shifted my parenting to asking open-ended questions, right? But not every kid's going to want to talk to you. My oldest son, he actually talks. He communicates. Hey, how's it going? Good. Well, this and that. He talks. He's always been that way. He talks. Very rare. And my second son, he used to talk when he was young. Then he hit puberty, and he stopped talking. And he go, hey, Jason, how are things at school today? Fine. I'm like, all right. Well, how's it going like in history? Good. I'm like, okay, what's my next question? See, you guys have a practice today after school? Yep. So I'm like, we're making good progress here. And he stopped talking. He stopped talking. He called his room the cave. He was in the cave. So I said, well, this isn't going very good here. I decided I didn't enter into his world. Even though I thought the games he was playing were kind of stupid and dumb, in my opinion, I entered his world and said, well, how does this game work? And we'd sit there and he'd explain it, and I'd start playing, and I actually enjoyed it. And he had other activities in, racing these bikes around and all. I do activities with him. And then when I was in there, and he got a car later, he's under the hood, and I say, well, we're talking, then I go, hey, how's it going in history? Oh, good, we have a test tomorrow. I'm like, tomorrow? He goes, oh yeah, he goes, well, I got it covered. I said, okay. So I did join with him, okay? My third son, Trevor, I'd say, he was in high school, I go, hey, Trevor, how are things going at school? He goes, oh, the inquiring father would like to know. It's like, well, I was just like, wondering, like, how things are going. He goes, well, if you're writing a book, you can leave that chapter out. So I'm not writing a book. I'm just asking a question. So I couldn't get anywhere with them. And one day I noticed he was talking. Wow, he's talking about everything. He's so open now, I can't believe it. And about a month later, he's all open again. He's like, because when you ask him a question now, he just smiles and goes, he's everything. And then I realized he's open when he eats. We're at a restaurant eating, and he's like, wow, he says everything. I think the food's like a truth serum, he's like drugged. And to this day, he doesn't know that's my strategy. I say, hey, do you want to go eat? He said, sure, he wants to eat. He's not going to say no to eating. When he eats, he talks. Some kids talk in the car, right, doing a common activity. My daughter, she'd come home, I can tell she's upset. And I go, hey, I go, is everything okay? Yes! Okay. Kind of sounds like no. You want to talk about anything? No! So I'm like, all right. Goes in the room. I'm like, should I go in there or not? Go over there. Hey, do you want to talk? No! Sounds like yes. And then I hang in there. I go, I'm just going to stay here. She starts talking. She starts talking. She keeps talking. She won't stop talking. And I'm walking away and she's following me around the house. And you know what else? I can't believe that teacher. She says that. Took a while to get her going. So the point of that is you have to find a way to connect with your kids. Every kid's different, right? Some of you have more than one kid. All their personalities are different. My son used to talk to me. My daughter talked to my wife. Then they switched. My daughter shares her personal stuff with me now. My son talks to my wife. That's fine, as long as we're getting information. We're like spies. And I'll say, can you ask him A, B, and C? And what did he say? Really? When she comes here, can you find out this from her? Okay, I'll find out for you. Okay, you just want to be able to get some information. But you're going to have to ask open-ended questions. And you can't be asking with a load of like, well, how was school today? Or did you do your homework? They're not going to want to talk to you. Okay? Find common activities. See if they talk when they eat. And kind of shift your parenting from you being on top of them and following them around and telling them what to do and monitoring everything to be more parallel. You heard of parallel universes? More parallel. And you're trying to guide them from 11 years old to a 24-year-old until you launch them. Okay, so you're just not tracking with them. How are you doing? Like if there's someone else's kid. You actually treat them like a human being. You talk to them. You go, hi, how are you? Like, why are you asking me that? I had one mom would always scream at her kids. At first she'd come telling me her daughter would scream at her, and I said, your kid told you that? I go, I can't believe it. That's horrible. Your kid talks to you that way? And I go, well, why'd she say that? Like, what happened right before that? She goes, well, I went in her room and I talked to her. Oh, well, how did you talk to her? Well, she went in her room and she went screaming at her daughter and yelling and going crazy. So the daughter's actually standing up for herself, fighting back. How we talk to our kids is important, and we have to allow them the space to be able to talk about what's going on with them. Okay, and the last thing I want to make before I have George come up, and then we'll take questions, is stress is like, a lot of our district here is looking at stress and, kind of overly scheduled. They did a teen survey here on the Hill, and it's about 60% of kids have 5 to 9 extracurricular activities they're doing besides school. 5 to 9. That's a lot of instruments, right? It's a lot of practices, rehearsals, classes, service, clubs. To me, it's too many. So stress is a big deal, and there's people from the district here going to these conferences at Stanford. They're looking at this high-achieving school districts that achieve high, but there's a cost for it. That their lives are out of balance, and the kids are having emotional problems, and mental problems, and coping problems, just keeping up with everything. There's kids that study, they sleep 2 hours a night, and they call each other every hour so they don't fall asleep, so they can study, because they got to get all A's, and they got to take all APs. I was not like that. There's kids like that. There's kids that are so overly committed to achieving, but they're just way out of whack. And they don't know how to relax. We need to find ways to relax. We're a role model to our kids. Our kids look at what we do, not what we say. So if you're not relaxed and you're all stressed out and your schedule's out of balance, your kids are learning that from you too. Kids learn from other kids. So it's okay for your kids to play. Sounds like first grade, right? It's okay to play. It's okay to have fun. They need to be able to relax their brain. They found that the brain needs to relax. What happens to a brain that goes on vacation, say go in a tropical place, it reboots itself. It gets away from responsibilities, and it starts like over, and it gets all creativity gets start over again, and imagination starts over again. And a stressed brain is very limited in its functioning, what it can accomplish. It can just memorize and do a short amount of functioning. So our brain needs to relax. We don't have to go on vacation. We take many vacations. We all need to find ways to... I went outside earlier here, relaxed myself for a few moments in a beautiful sky before I came to talk, because I was all stressed out about all this stuff I had heard today from other stuff going on out there. Okay, so you need to find ways to relax yourself, and our kids do too. So allow them to play, allow them to have fun, and if they're not, try to create it. Like you would do play dates when they're little, try to put some stuff in their life and see that they're actually enjoying themselves. Because the high school kids who are, doing great in sports, doing great with grades, a lot of them are drinking to cope with stress, or smoking marijuana, or taking pills to cope with stress, because they don't know how. And once you get all your habits developed a certain way, it's pretty hard to learn until something bad happens, and then you realize I got to slow down. I'm doing too much. I got to relax. Until they're forced to by a life circumstance. So George is going to scare you in a minute. But we work with a lot of problem situations. Okay, we counted a few years ago. There's a lot of kids have died from up here. 16 to 21-year-olds. There's like 15 or 20 kids have died in the last 2 to 3 years. Have died. Death from car accidents, suicides, a lot of accidental overdoses. They take a pill, they get drunk, and they try cocaine, and have a heart attack, and they're dead. So a lot of those are college kids. And the college scene's a whole other wild world. But there's a whole another dozens of kids that have other problems, right? They didn't die, but they had they got arrested, or they got raped, or they got beat up, or they got whatever. They got kicked out of school. So our kids are at risk. Every weekend here, anything bad can happen. And it's not any different than other, the rest of LA County. But you need to know where your kids are, what they're doing, and what they're up to. You need to find out not by not being an in-your-face detective, but by observation and being curious, and through relationship. And if your kid's doing something you don't like, you think is dangerous, you think risky, you're worried, tell them. Not yell at them, just talk with them. in a time when you're not going to be interrupted on a Saturday, sitting around and go, I want to talk to you about something. I'm worried. I'm scared. I'm concerned. I'm not putting you down. I'm just worried. I'm worried about what's going on with you. Like last night, or the weekends, or this kid. I'm worried you guys are doing this or that. So have your kid explain to you, like they're on the witness stand, why you should not be worried about them. Why you should be confident that you can trust them. Allow them to think. Allow them to brainstorm. Allow them to have the ability to come up with conversation and reasoning. And maybe you've got clever kids, and they can manipulate you and make up a great argument. That's great. Maybe they'll be an attorney. Maybe not. But then you could tell them, you know what, sometime, I don't know if you're really telling me the truth. You're so clever and, mysterious. So how can I know if you're really telling me the truth? So just being honest. But have your kid explain to you why you should believe him. Okay? I'm not saying your kids are negative, but have your kids explain their life and their choices. They need to hear themselves think. They don't know what they're doing. They're so young, they're trying to find their way. They need the ability to think and to brainstorm and get ideas out and to have the freedom just to do that. They'll do that with their friends, but it'd be good if they could do it in the family environment or with someone that they feel is totally there with them and for them and doesn't react for a while. Okay? So with that, I'm going to stop and I'm going to transition here. And ask George Bird to come on up, please.
Great, thank you for that introduction, and thank you for your thunderous applause. The views, I see we're being recorded, so I must give a disclaimer that the views expressed tonight by myself don't reflect at all on the City of Palos Verdes Estates. The fact that I currently hold elective office, I'm not here in my role on the City Council. I'm here to share with you as a parent in this community my concerns. And I was crossing off areas that I was going to speak about tonight as Greg was speaking, so I've shortened my speech from half an hour to about 3 minutes. And it is absolutely true. I'm here to depress you and to scare you even more than we are already scared as parents of children on the peninsula. I'd like to get an idea from you how old your children are. So, how old are your children? We'll start at the front. Coming back.
11 and 13.
17.
16 and
6 and 13.
2 15 15 and 12.
16. I'm 1 to 2 to 15 years. Next group.
21.
11 and 13.
16, 13, and 9.
9 and 11. 12.
11 and 13.
10 and 13.
15.
8, 12, and 14. 2 16-year-olds. 13 and 11.
14 and 15.
2 12-year-olds.
3 and 12.
13 and 16.
17, 16, 14, and 11. 15 and 18. 21 and 17. 5 and 20. 13 and 16.
And Greg Allen's right, the spirit of successful 4 children. As Greg was speaking, I was thinking, when we came home from Torrance Memorial Hospital, they taught us how to change diapers, and they taught my wife how to breastfeed, but I wish we would have gotten a video of Dr. Allen, because that would have made the last 20 years at our house a lot easier. Our boys are now 23 and 20, and every time I hear Greg Allen speak, I think, wish I had done that, because I was constantly the one who my son would say, oh, Jamie smokes pot. And I remember, oh, Jamie. So then we'd be talking, and I'd say, oh, who went out? And he said, oh, Jamie. I said, oh, the pot smoker? And I realized how polarizing my reaction was, and how, as Greg said, you need to keep that therapist face when your children tell you something and not let it show, because I would do that. I also was guilty of being angry that he hadn't cleaned his room, or one of our sons liked to keep wet towels on the floor of his bedroom after he would take a shower. And this just irked me to no end. And so I made a big deal of it all the time. And I still, to this day, when he comes home from college, will go in his room and look at the wet towel on the ground. And my wife will say, pick your battles. And frankly, I still am that kind of helicopter parent, and I still search their rooms and search the bathrooms and search their cars. I still do all that stuff, and I'm going to share with you some of those confessions tonight. Because I'm afraid. I'm scared. I admit it. Nothing. My greatest fear in my life is that something's going to happen to my sons. It helps keep me fat. It helps keep me up. It helps me with all the stressors in my life. Nothing is more important to me than my children. I'd say take my wife before them, take me before them, and although I'm happily married for 24 years, but it's my children. I would do anything for them. And I don't care whether it's a significant health issue that one of your children faces, or they're arrested, or they have a problem with alcohol or drugs. As a community, we're all in this together. So I appreciate hearing how old all of your children are, because I don't care whether they're 9 or they're 16 or 21. We're all in this together. So thank you all for coming. It's amazing having you here. And when another child dies this spring up on the hill, then the next time Greg opens the doors, we'll have more people here. But it's not until one of our children dies in the community that we really take notice and take this seriously. I spoke to 20 16-year-olds on Sunday evening, a group of Los Hermanos, and I asked one of the young men who's on the football team, what's the percentage of high school students that drink alcohol? Because I thought it was actually a test. I wanted to see if he'd be honest with me. And he said 80% of the kids in high school are drinking and smoking pot. Smoking pot might be a little less than that, but 80%. And is that consistent with what you put on? Yeah. I was amazed that he was that honest with me. And by the way, the parents were in the room when I was asking the question. Because I think it's important that you speak with your children and they feel comfortable speaking with you. And I also think it's important that the children talk to each other. And I think it's incredibly important that we talk to each other. So that when your child tells you you're the only one who doesn't let something go on, you'll know that's more, that indeed you're not the toughest parent on the hill. You're just as tough as your children's friends' parents. So 80% of the kids are drinking and using drugs. I'm a criminal lawyer. Have any of you heard me speak before? Probably going to make some people cry, so I apologize. I represent young people that do some awful things, or are accused of doing some awful things. I represent young men who go to parties, drink, put substances in the girls' drinks, girls pass out, and the boys take photographs of them naked with objects extending outside of their vaginas. I represent young people on the Hill that are engaged in disseminating child pornography because they text each other on something called sexting. They send images of each other naked, and then unfortunately the girls are smarter than the boys, so the boys get the naked image, so they transmit it to some of their friends. And the images are naked pictures of girls under the age of 18, and then that's called transmission or dissemination of child pornography. I represent young people that are driving cars under the influence of alcohol and drugs, or in one case, because the parents were testing their son for illegal drugs, he started to take Xanax. And therefore he took Xanax and drank, crashed his car, and severed the leg of his passenger. About a month or so ago, a young lady, not my client, and of course I won't say anything, I won't share any client confidences, but a young lady at a local high school who was in a position of responsibility in elected office crashed her car one Saturday night, injuring herself, but luckily not injuring the 3 other girls in the car, right in front of the party where the Booster Club was having a fundraiser that night. And she has a DUI pending right now in the courts. Court funding has really taken some of the resources away from the juvenile court where our children would go if they were arrested. And unfortunately, recently, the district attorney's office and the probation department, where young people have been arrested for driving under the influence of alcohol, the case did not go to court. It got resolved informally through counseling in the probation department. And while those parents are relieved their son or daughter didn't have a criminal record by going to court, the lesson learned by that 16 or 17-year-old that was drinking is, it's not a big deal. So that case didn't go to court. So our children are at risk here. A parent took their daughter to high school at Penn High School and dropped her off at 7 o'clock in the morning and drove home. And her daughter then got in the car of her boyfriend and went down Hawthorne to get a bagel at the bagel store on Hawthorne, just south of ECH. While coming back up Hawthorne at Palos Verdes Drive North, because there was water on the roadway, it had rained, the young man lost control of the car and hit a pole, and Anna Mae Neff, a 16-year-old, was killed at the scene. And her mother had dropped her off at school that morning. Anna Mae Neff had not consumed alcohol, had not done drugs, was a wonderful young lady. She was an equestrian. She was a lovely young girl, had a wonderful family. And I was at that funeral listening to her father give her eulogy. And I was amazed at the strength of a man who's able to speak at his daughter's funeral. That's the reality of the pressures and the dangers that our children are facing. Not only whether they put the substance in their mouth, but if they're in the seat next to somebody driving when there's an accident, like what occurred to Anna Mae Neff. Now, the interesting thing on her case is her boyfriend had a provisional driver's license. And that means when we turned 16, we received a full license. Now, when you're 15 and a half, you qualify for a permit. And that permit is good for 6 months, during which you have to practice driving. And your parents must sign off that you have the requisite number of hours practicing. Then when a young man or woman turns 16, they qualify to get a provisional license, which is not a full license. It's a license that allows them to drive with no passengers, unless the passenger is an adult. There is a provision where family members can ride with that 16-year-old driver, but the police are currently not enforcing that provision the way it could be enforced, because to have a younger brother and sister, it needs to be something that's not all the time, with a note from the parents. So local law enforcement is allowing younger brothers and sisters to drive with that provisional licensee, but they can't bring their friends in the car. Now, for as busy parents, sometimes we let our children drive your younger brothers and sisters to school on a regular basis, but the rules are they're not allowed to have passengers except adults. After a period of time, the provisional license becomes a full license. And this young man who was driving was not allowed to have passengers in the car at the time. That's not what caused the accident, but how ironic that if he had been following the law, Anna Mae would not have died. When your child comes to you at 15 and a half and says, sign off on my hours, I'm now 16, it's my birthday tomorrow, I want to go get my license. I know I was supposed to do 50 hours, I've done 40 hours. Please sign off and let me get my license. What do you do? Well, it's easy for us to say in this room, oh, no, we won't do that. As our child is, because they don't take no for an answer, right? Saying, it's my birthday tomorrow, I want to go get my license, it's just 10 more hours, you know I'm a good driver. There are, unfortunately, a lot of parents that will say, okay, I'll sign it off. You owe me 10 hours. What are you communicating to your child about the law, following the rules, ethics, personal responsibility. When your child gets that car and drives, you can enter into a contract with them as to what the rules will be. And you can make those contracts with your children on any behavioral issue, on how they talk to you at home, on how they do chores, on how they interact with family members, on whatever rules you want to make at home. You can enter into such a contract. You don't need a lawyer to draw up that contract. Enter into agreements with your children that have expectations of behavior and consequences. 15 and 16-year-old boys don't know that they smell. But we all know that they do. When your children come home with gum and mints, or when they start burning incense and candles in their room, there's a reason they're doing that. It's not because they like the smell of sandalwood. They're masking. So the rule at our house when our sons would come home was they had to kiss us goodnight. And no gum, no mints. And what they didn't know is when they were kissing us goodnight, I was smelling them. So be aware of masking. I believe that in your home, you can search anywhere, anytime, wherever you want. So I would go to the dirty clothes. I'm crazy on this. I admit this. I would go to the dirty clothes and take their jeans and pull out the pocket, and I'd look to see what the lint was inside of the pockets. I didn't want to be surprised one day when I got a call from the police department or the school, so I was looking at the lint in their pockets. It's illegal for children to have lighters until you're 18. There's nothing for them to light on fire. And the exception to that is if they're wearing a Boy Scout uniform. But even then, they should be able to learn how to light the fire without the lighter. So if you find lighters, that's a signal that there's something wrong. One of our residents on the Hill, Lori Gray and her husband Dudley Gray, lost their son to heroin in their home 9 years ago maybe. The Grays lost their oldest son to heroin overdose in their home. Dudley was a Superior Court judge at the courthouse, and Lori, speech pathologist, worked at this school district, stay-at-home mom. Wonderful parents, great family. Dudley's father built that Iowa courthouse at the Crenshaw off-ramp of the 405, a prominent family on the Hill. Heroin overdose in their home. Lori tells the story of finding cord in her son's room and wondering what it was, and her son said, "Oh, that's just leftover leash from my surfboard." Well, your child shouldn't have about a length of cord this long in their room. And she describes how the little hairs in the back of your neck, that when they raise up or you know something's not right, you're right. So when you think there's something going on, there is something going on. Lighters and masking are areas that you should be looking out for. Search. I would search under the mattress. I would search under the towels in the bathroom, where I would find, well, I won't say what I found since I'm being taped. Because as a matter of them exploring who they are, I had to let them have that part of, it wasn't involving drugs or alcohol, so if they had anyhow. Look in their closets, look in their drawers. I would open their books and look in their notebooks. I would go in the car and look in every area of the car, in the trunk, the glove box, in the seat cushions. I would do all that periodically. And I don't apologize for it. They're my kids. I don't want to be the last to know. I'm going to protect them. And I want to know if there's a reason why we need to start going to see Greg Allen, knowing if we, bless you, see if we need to go to the Torrance Memorial Hospital. I wanted to be proactive in helping our children become 24-year-olds. So that's what I would do, and that's what I did do as they grew up. One of my clients is 19 years old. She was driving, she got off work on Saturday night. She was going to college and working 2 jobs. She got off work on Saturday night, went to a party in Hollywood Riviera, was drinking at the party. I said she was 19. They played beer pong. She went to bed at 1:30 at night. She woke up the next day at 7 o'clock, and what I'm telling you is in the newspaper, so I'm not disclosing any attorney-client secrets. She woke up at 7 o'clock in the morning, drove her 3 friends from Hollywood Riviera, got them in the car, started to drive, and hit 2 men on a bicycle. Her blood alcohol level at 7:30 was 0.15. So when she went to bed at 1:30 in the morning, it was higher. Alcohol goes in and it takes some time for it to go out. Experts will testify that you get rid of the alcohol at a 0.01 or 0.015 per hour. So if you're driving at 8 o'clock in the morning and you finish drinking at 1 o'clock in the morning, that's 7 hours, you're going to lose about 0.10. So if you're a 0.20 when you go to bed, or we think she was about a 0.23, she's a 0.15 at 7:30 when she hit 2 men on a bicycle. The judge ordered her to pay $6 million in restitution. How many of you have $6 million in insurance on your car? She'll never get out from under that obligation. She'll never be able to buy a home because there's going to be a permanent judgment against her. She has a felony. She went to jail for a year because a 19-year-old going to school, working 2 waitressing jobs, playing beer pong, went to bed, did the right thing, went to bed at least. We can say, good. Woke up the next day, thought she was okay, drove, had an accident, somebody severely injured. The civil liability, you can understand the criminal issues, but the civil liability is huge. What's your civil liability for the actions of your children? Well, let me tell you what the lawyer for one of the guys on the bike did. He sued her. Her insurance company paid policy limits, I think $30,000, which is probably the bill for the first 2 or 3 days in the hospital, if that. Then the lawyer for the guy on the bike sued all the other girls in the car. Any lawyers in the room? What kind of law do you practice? Okay. Welcome. They're my friends. Sued the other girls in the car who were not operating the vehicle and didn't own the vehicle. Those girls turned that lawsuit over to their automobile insurance companies. And the automobile insurance company said, we're not covering this, you weren't driving. So then the girls' families turned it over to their homeowners' policies. And the homeowners' policy said, we don't insure you for being a passenger in a car. So these families had to go hire their own lawyers. So those lawyers were hired, and ultimately the judge said, yes, passengers don't owe a duty to an injured party, and ultimately dismissed the case against those 3 girls after they had all hired lawyers. The lawyer then also sued everybody at the party under a theory that first the 3 girls in the car knew she was underage, still got in the car, knew she'd have been drinking, shouldn't have let her drive. The law currently doesn't recognize a duty to keep the driver from driving unless you really, really know they're hammered, and apparently she looked okay the next day. The lawyer then sued everybody at the party under a theory that they all knew she was underage, shouldn't have been drinking, and should have done something to keep her from drinking. Those people all had to hire lawyers. The lawsuit against all the people at the party was ultimately dismissed also after they all hired lawyers. They don't get their attorney's fees back. The lawyer, who's not a scoundrel, he's a decent gentleman, did so to try to get the largest return for his client's damages, which are substantial. So the villain in this is not the lawyer who's representing the man who's injured on the bike. But all these people had to come up with money to hire lawyers to defend themselves because the lawyer was trying to maximize the recovery for their legitimately injured client. So your child's at a party and suddenly you get a service of a lawsuit. Your child's being sued because they were at the party where somebody was drinking when they shouldn't have been drinking. And you're going to sit down with your child and say, now do you know what I was talking about? Why? Because your child was drinking at a party, and they shouldn't have been. There's a large number of families that allow sleepovers to go on the hill. Sleepovers, in my opinion, are nonsense. Sleepovers are a way for your children to do things when that you won't let them do. So they go over to your house to do things that she won't let them do, but they can do at your house. But that's not really the worst part. The worst part is when they come to your house to do the sleepover, you may not know how many people come through the door and how many people go out the door and where those people go who go out the door, and the next morning who's still there. Because there are plenty of kids who will say, I'm going to his house, but really they're out gallivanting, doing other things. So I'm not sure what the necessity is of the sleepover, except to do things that your parents won't let you do. I think the better thing to do is if your children want to go to the sleepover, you say, great, I'll drive you over, and I'll pick you up at a certain time, and then you'll come home and sleep here. I don't even think the answer is no, let them come to your house for the sleepover, because you're going to have the same problem when other kids come, and while they're there, other kids come, and then people leave. And unless you want them to be sleeping in your bedroom, lying down, like something out of the Van Trapp family from Sound of Music, where they're all in a row, how are you going to count noses and know who's there and who's not there? So I think the sleepovers are nonsense. I recommend against them. I'm currently representing a young man who, along with his 3 friends, were going to a private school in Southern California. And at the school, apparently there were a lot of eggings going on at houses. You've heard of such things? People throw eggs at houses or TPing. Okay, well, this is egging gone amok. Apparently, our client's home was egged twice, but this young man's family was egged 3 or 4 times, and it was traumatic for them because it stinks, it's messy, you got to deal with it. But it got to be so, yes, it's damaging the car. It got to be so bad that the mom thought she had a heart attack, had to actually go to the hospital. Thank goodness she didn't. Well, the last time it happened, they were really upset, so this time they went to Vons and looked at the video, and there are the 3 boys walking into Vons to buy the eggs, and coming out with the boxes of eggs, and that's how they figure out who did it. And they used their credit card, mom's credit card, when they bought the eggs. So they figured out who did the egging. The case is pending in court. The family wants $86,000 for the egging of their house. The claim is that the egging has so discolored the concrete, the roof, the paint, all the masonry, that it all needs to be replaced. Now, that's a lot of money for egging. Egging is illegal. Teeping is illegal. Don't encourage your kids to do it. Caution them not to. It's trespass, it's vandalism, bad idea. In this case, we're fighting about $86,000. How much more time do I have? 5 minutes? 1 minute. Okay, I'm about halfway through. Prescription medication. Your children are not stealing your medication. It's not happening. You trust your kids, they're great kids, it's not happening. But what you don't know is when your son, you have a son, when your son, 4, you have 4 sons, when your son comes over and you're not there and brings in 2 of his friends, especially if one of them is a girl, and they say, can we use the bathroom? And they go into the bathroom, they go into your bathroom, and your son wouldn't take your medication, but his friends will. And they go in and open the cabinet and see what you have. And they help themselves. And they either sell or give away or use that stuff. And your son doesn't even know what's happening. All he knows is that somebody said, I need to go to the bathroom, I'll be right down, I'll be right back, real quick. So make sure your kids are aware that if the rule is nobody's allowed in your home without you being there, nobody's allowed in your home without them being there. But just be aware that while you trust your children, indeed some of their friends may not deserve your trust. I have a lot I could say, but I just want to end by saying this. I'm really glad that you're all here. Please talk to each other. We're all in this together as parents, all of us. The object is to not have any of our children on the peninsula leave us during the next year. That's the goal. We want to raise healthy children at age 24, but I just want to make sure that we don't have children leaving us prematurely. And it takes all of us working together. law enforcement, but more importantly, parents. Parents talking to their children and parents talking to other parents. Thank you.